Welcome to Act 2, Scene 1. In this scene, Macbeth has made up his mind, finally, to kill Duncan. We're going to see him on his way. Shakespeare will not show the killing of the king. That is taboo because regicide is taboo. And obviously he wants to flatter King James, and therefore he makes it almost seem as though killing a king is so horrific it cannot be even shown on stage. This reinforces the political point that the nobles present at the production at St James's Palace will get the message the king's life is sacrosanct, protected by God. On no account should they think of murdering him. But we're also going to meet Banquo. Now, the traditional view of Banquo is that he is an ancestor of King James, and therefore Shakespeare wants to portray him in the best light. Now, that's partly true because Banquo is not going to join in Macbeth's plot to kill Duncan. However, it's going to be worth asking why Macbeth doesn't ask Banquo to help him. So Shakespeare actually begins the scene with Banquo and Fleance. Banquo's simile is really interesting. A heavy summons lies upon me like lead. Well, who is summoning him? It's not Macbeth. What is he listening to that feels so heavy and that he compares to this base metal, lead, the opposite in Jacobean times of gold? Well, obviously it must be something really base, really sinful. This is Shakespeare's way of showing us that Banquo is actually imagining killing Duncan. Well, that's what the real Banquo did. What's in it for Banquo in this play? Well, if he helps Macbeth to kill Duncan, Duncan's out of the way. Macbeth is one step closer to becoming king, which means Fleance is one step closer to becoming king. So it's in Banquo's best interests for Macbeth to get away with killing Duncan. And so he's wondering, should I help? This is why he asks the merciful powers to restrain me. He is appealing to God or to angels. He's asking for mercy to prevent him having this vision of killing Duncan. This marks him out as a good character in contrast to Macbeth. The other contrast, of course, is that he has a son, whereas we just met Macbeth without a son. He calls his thoughts the cursed thoughts that nature gives way to in repose. Notice the word nature. He's saying that this is only natural. Anyone in his position would be having the same thoughts. Perhaps Shakespeare wants us to see that this is a bit disingenuous. Or perhaps Shakespeare is saying, hey, there's that original sin again. We're all born with this capacity for evil. Let's not be too quick to judge Macbeth and Banquo for what they think about and eventually what they do. Banquo's opening gambit is really interesting. I dreamt last night of the three weird sisters. Now, in a separate video, I'll talk about whether there has actually been a last night or whether Shakespeare has compressed time so that this evening is the evening of the day of the battle. We'll save that for another time. So let's imagine that he's telling the truth, that he has had this dream about the weird sisters. This would show that evil is trying to manipulate him as well. That would suggest that he's not necessarily resisting. It would imply that he's inviting Macbeth to talk about the witches and their prophecies in order that they may then consider killing Duncan together. Or you may take the opposite alternative, that Shakespeare is creating two opposites, that Banquo is the antithesis to Macbeth, and therefore he brings up the weird sisters in order to persuade Macbeth not to listen to what they say. In other words, he's going to try to prevent the regicide. Let's look at the iambic stresses on the next line. To you they have showed some truth. When it's accented that way, is this an invitation to say greater truth, that is kingship, awaits you, or is it a way for him to say they've only shown you some truth, the rest is a lie. Now, we don't find out. Shakespeare leaves us to think about this, but this conversation will dictate how we view Banquo in later acts. And so in later videos, I'm going to argue that actually Banquo's quite keen for Duncan to get killed, but we'll save that for later. Macbeth's reply, I think not of them. 5 syllables, following on from Banquo's 7 syllables. We have a 12-syllable joined up line. It does not match. It shows complete conflict between the two, and it shows definitely that Macbeth is lying when he says, I think not of them. It's 5 syllables, it's too many. He is indulging in a falsehood here, and Shakespeare conveys that to us with the break in iambic pentameter. He also gives Macbeth that first accented syllable, I think not of them. So although that follows the iambic pentameter, it gives him a trochaic stress on his first syllable, which again makes him sound evil, because that's what Shakespeare does. When he wants his characters to sound evil, he puts often the stress on that first syllable. The conversation that follows between them, I'm not going to go through here because it just details that same ambiguity. Is Banquo saying, let's talk about this again because I'm going to help you? Or is he saying, let's talk about this again because I'm going to try and convince you not to kill Duncan? We never find out.